Hey everybody, and welcome to the next edition to Scene on Screen with Ned Halaby, Claremont Television's own film review and discussion show. With me again is Stu Friedel, my close friend and current, well, I guess the most common co-host here at Scene on Screen. This week we are going to be looking at the new Rambo film starring Sylvester Stallone and lots of actors and actresses you've never heard of. And
the guy
then,
from 24, Chappelle from 24.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I think his name was like Matthew Schultz or something like that. And then the beautiful and vivacious Andy Sober-Pena will be coming in, and we're going to be talking about Candy, which will go down in history as one of the last performances by Heath Ledger. And after that, I'm going to review a film as Ned's pick of the week that I do every week. So why don't we just get right into it, Stu? Rambo. We had the opportunity to see this in Ontario, California a couple days ago, and I was blown away. Let's just say that.
Well, the only thing that blew me away more this week was, and I wish we had a cameraman that could zoom in on this, was your manicure. So I hope the audience can get a shot of the green fingernails. But blown away doesn't even begin to describe it. Sylvester Stallone owned the movie for what it was. He didn't apologize to anyone. He didn't try making a plot. He just basically was like, let's see how much disgusting gore we can show. The only thing that would have been better if it was in 3D. That's what I said to you after the movie. I would have loved an IMAX 3D of this. But Lord, they did not hold back at all. And it was beautiful.
They did not hold back. I can't remember a film I've seen that had as little dialogue as that movie had and as little plot as that movie did, and that I've enjoyed as much as I did. Because there's lots of films that sacrifice plot and dialogue in deference to blood and guts, but this one had it. It did it so well and so mercilessly. It was one of the most mercilessly violent, over the top in every. Stallone was the only character who was, or only part of the film that wasn't over the top. He held back a lot, I felt. And I think that I mean, as you said, the movie embraced what it was. It didn't try to be anything more.
It's completely unapologetic for what it was, and it just, it owned up to it. I personally think that it would have been a cool gimmick if they didn't have a single word of English in the entire film, and if they didn't have any subtitles, and they just basically said to you, the dialogue means nothing anyways, so we might as well not bother with it. But it also would have been a little bit too self-referential. I liked, I don't think this ruins anything. Actually, I'm not going to say this just in case.
Well, we'll give a little summation of the plot, not of the climax or anything else, but if you haven't seen the film yet, the new Rambo film catches up with our hero, the always disillusioned and tormented John Rambo. We catch up with him in the Thai jungle where he's appropriately hunting cobras for a living. Only Stallone could invent a character who retreats into seclusion to hunt cobras, as if that's sort of therapeutic or something like that. But he gets called back into action by a beautiful and Christian Bible-thumping girl comes to town, gives him a cross, and he sets off on another adventure into Burma. I don't know why they couldn't call it Myanmar, but it's Burma in this film. Never even mentioned as Myanmar. I don't know. That's sort of problematic for me. But basically, yeah, he gets called back into action to give up his cobra catching.
A lot of people in the theater that we saw it with, I heard complaining about that.
Really?
No. I think legitimately you're the only person that took up issue with it.
Yeah, I guess in Ontario that's probably true. But I mean, either way, the film takes upon sort of a current event type thing. There's been a lot of press about the military junta in Myanmar and the persecution of Buddhists and other minority groups, and this, I guess, took current events way further than anybody else would dare do. I thought it was interesting, and some things I've read about the film is that if any of you have seen Rocky Part 3, we'll get to the other two in a minute. Rocky Part 3 actually takes place in Afghanistan during the Soviet occupation in the 80s.
Rocky 4.
No, that's Rocky 3. This is Rocky 4.
You're talking about Rambo.
Right, Rambo. Excuse me, Rambo. Rocky Balboa came out last year. Either way, Rambo 3 takes place during Afghanistan in the Soviet occupation, And a lot of people thought that the current Rambo might go into a similar, hunting for Osama bin Laden this time, instead of, choosing to go into Burma, which I thought was an interesting choice.
I think it's a great choice. I think that, you know what, they didn't, at the time this movie was made, the events weren't as definitively current. The past few weeks have had a lot of news about that, even though it's been going on for 40 years. So it was just a background place where there's violence where you could put Rambo in the middle of. Mm-hmm. And I heard there were a lot of like plot points they were talking about. A few of which did involve hunting terrorists. But I think that frankly, like, that's not what Rambo does, in the same way that that I don't want to see Jack Bauer fighting nuclear bombs from far away. What I want to see Rambo do is go hand-to-hand combat with very definable bad guys who all they want to do is kill, and all he wants to do is kill back. That's all I want to see. And it did it. And it did it very well, and I loved it.
It's a gloriously simplistic plot with so much gore, and that film was more graphically violent than your Saws, your Hostels,
much more.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre remakes or originals. This film was, I think, one of the most graphically violent films I have ever seen. And I've seen a lot of violent movies. But this is literally 90 minutes of severed limbs, heads, blowings up, literally guts flying at you, pretty much anything he could come up with. I would have loved to have been a technician on that movie. Just been like, here's free reign to blow up whoever and whatever you want.
Now that I'm thinking about it, does the main bad guy say a word the entire movie?
He smokes cigarettes and he has aviator sunglasses on. But I think you're right. I don't think he does say any word.
Smoking will kill you, kids.
Yeah, and I think if you smoke in the movies, you're pretty much a bad guy these days. I mean, Gone are Bogey and Bacall smoking away and crooning for each other. But now you smoke. Apparently, you kill children with a bayonet, just close up.
So it goes.
Which is,
So that's the truth in life, though, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. But have you seen the First Blood? The First Blood?
It's been a while, but I have.
That's a film that I think, it's worth discussing Rambo mythology, because this film embraces it like the second and third Rambo started to embrace the sort of go it alone, body count up to whatever, type of mythology. But the first film really wasn't about that at all. The first film was sort of like a reaction to the Vietnam War. You have a soldier returning home. Common misconception, The First Blood takes place in America. It takes place in Oregon, in the forest in Oregon, where Rambo fights against a town sheriff and his deputies, right. And then the American army is brought in to fight Rambo, and they go head to head at it. And as far as I remember, only one person dies in all of First Blood, and it's sort of an accident, because Rambo sort of causes him to die, but it's not like Rambo's shooting up a town or going crazy on people. It's sort of like he's pushed into a corner, and he takes care of one person, but I think there's only one casualty in the entire film. And there was at least 300 in the last film.
Yeah, I read the body count. I forget exactly what it was, but it was well over 1 a minute. I think it was up to 3 or 4 a minute or 5 a minute.
I would believe it. I think it's got to be up to 5 a minute, maybe. Just the last 20 minutes of this film, it's just extraordinary. It's comic almost.
And keep in mind,
we were laughing when we were watching it.
The body count for scenes like the mass destruction scenes, you couldn't even count that. That's just it's just numbers.
There's too many limbs flying around. I'd love to know the limb count, counting the head, separating.
Statistics on how the movie was actually made, how many fake body parts were used, how much.
I want to know that information.
I think this might have been the only time ever that it would have been cheaper to use CG for blood than it would have been to use fake blood.
And that didn't look like CG. We discussed this after. I think that was real fake blood.
The guts were the only thing.
Maybe.
I think were CG, and I think that I mean, this is just my own conjecturing, but the Motion Picture Association of America probably had them tone that down, because there were times where you really saw the guts and that they looked definitively unrealistic. Mm-hmm. And I think that was probably an MPAA thing. and that looked like they CG'd out what used to be realistic guts.
I think you're right. I think, yeah.
So
it's too expensive, I think, to do that kind of blood work these days. But I mean, overall, I gotta give it a thumbs up. I think you just need to see this movie for the experience of seeing that kind of comic book level violence. Like it's supposed to be real, current event, topical, genocide, but it just comes off as off the wall wacky. It's just
but definitive thumbs up. And coming up next week is Hannah Montana 3D. Is that what you're reviewing?
Oh, maybe. I'm gonna need a trench coat
Along
and
the same
a top
lines.
hat and
And nothing
a sticky
underneath.
floored theater. But
oh God, let me
let's
take
not
this.
go
That's just
we're gonna get in trouble with the MPA. I know.
CGI.
But so Stu and I both decide that Rambo is worth the price of admission.
And see it in theaters.
It absolutely see it in theaters.
It is not a home movie. It's a theater movie.
It's a theater movie. You don't want to rent this on Netflix and watch it on your computer, kids. It's worth seeing on the big screen. Just
you don't want to watch it on your iPhone. You'll upset David Lynch.
I'm not even sure what that means.
Did you see that Inland Empire special feature that was floating around YouTube?
No.
I mean, I agree with him, but David Lynch basically went on a tirade about how absurd the idea is that you can watch a movie on a screen that big. And I agree completely, but I mean, Rambo is a perfect example. But nonetheless.
What would the Godfathers of cinema say? So coming up next, as just walked into the set, the beautiful and tall goddess herself, Andy Sobrepeno, will be joining me in discussing Candy, the 2006 film starring Heath Ledger. And we'll see you right after that. All right, welcome back to Scene on Screen with Ned Halaby. Replacing the glorious Stu is the even more brilliant Andy Sobrepeno, who's here with me today to discuss Candy, the 2006 film starring Heath Ledger, Geoffrey Rush, and newcomer Abby Cornish. It's an Australian film with an Australian cast and tells the story of two junkies who are addicted to heroin as well as each other and fall madly in love, get married, and sort of the film explores their sort of descent into just complete total addiction, withdrawal, dependency on the drug and on each other. And I mean, it's a pretty powerful film, as most films about heroin addiction are. It's split into 3 acts titled Heaven, Earth, and Hell. Heaven, obviously, when they first meet and fall in love. Earth is when they're sort of brought back into reality and are forced to do whatever it takes to get enough money to survive, including stealing and prostitution. And then Hell, which is the sort of culmination of their addiction and their basic breaking down of their relationship. And I mean, I thought it was an interesting film. It wasn't stylized, which I like. Most films that come out these days about drugs, especially heroin or other or amphetamines, are hyper stylized. Salt and Sea, Train Spotting, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Requiem for a Dream too.
Another perfect example. Requiem for a Dream. All these movies use very fast editing techniques, a lot of fisheye lens type things. This film shied away.
They definitely do that to try to get you in the mindset of like being, fucked up.
We're gonna have to bleep that, but yeah.
But I
under
think
the
that,
influence, yeah.
Yeah, under the influence, and I think they do a good job in that. And they kind of have like a cautionary message.
Mm-hmm.
Cautionary message, I think, in most of those films at least. And this one is more just a story of these two people rather than like, do you want to do drugs? Do you want to involve yourself in this type of lifestyle? Yeah.
I mean, I think you're right. The editing techniques that most current films use, that when they cover drugs, is to simulate a drug experience, basically, especially in the case of the Salton Sea within the first 10 minutes of that film, and whether or not you've done drugs, you can sort of relate to that. But I think given the content of the film being about heroin, the film was paced extremely slowly, and the characters move very slowly, and it feels like it's going a lot longer. The film's about 100 minutes, but it feels a lot longer than that. I watched it, and I was shocked when I learned that when I checked and I had 20 minutes left in the movie, and I felt like it had gone on for a long time, which can be.
I didn't really feel that way about
really?
it. Yeah. I kind of was waiting for the third, because obviously they had the heaven and earth, and I was just obviously waiting for the hell part to come in. And then, I don't know, I guess there's, like, with 20 minutes left into the movie, I didn't feel like there was anywhere to close yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're just, like, waiting for that closure kind of moment.
Yeah, and the film, the film ends almost not abruptly, but it's a very small climax, especially towards the end. One that I wasn't really expecting, but we don't have to go into that. I mean, the relationship between the two people, the film is over several years, I guess, and it's an intense love story. I thought it was The Notebook on heroin.
Yeah, I guess so. Minus the Alzheimer's.
And the old people.
And the old people and war.
And the war.
Yeah.
But the war was in their minds, man.
War on drugs.
The war on drugs. It was the Reaganomics there. How about the performances? How do you feel?
Well, what struck me most about it was, because of the whole Heath Ledger dying thing, that was kind of I watched it and saw that it was like a heroin thing, and all the drug assumptions that were going on about his death, and that I kind of read into that role more as like him as a drug addict, or like possible drug addict, and I think they were pretty good performances. I think the girl I forget the actress.
Abby Cornish.
Abby Cornish was pretty good in her role.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I think that was the most interesting thing. I wish I had seen the film before. I watched the film, or for anybody who hasn't heard, I don't think there is anybody. Heath Ledger passed away about 2 weeks ago from supposedly a drug-related death. They're not exactly sure yet. But watching this film after that had happened, it was definitely, I mean, it probably manipulated our experience watching the film. I think it was a fantastic performance. I think Heath Ledger was a fantastic actor. I thought he and Jeffrey Rush were spectacular.
Spectacular.
Jeffrey Rush plays a sort of father figure to them, basically somebody who supplies them with tons of drugs, and basically that's how he functions.
Actually, when I first heard about the movie and saw the movie, it was before, like a week before. It was over like one of the last days of winter break, and I basically was watching it before this whole thing happened, like a week before, and I was like, oh God, him playing a drug addict, that's crazy. And then he died.
I mean, I think a lot more people will see this movie because they'll be interested in seeing his performance. It's a spectacular performance. Abby Cornish, I thought was good. She never really looked like a heroin addict to me. True. She looked sort of just the same throughout the movie. There wasn't sort of like a physical toll.
She kind of like denigrated a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought, but just by makeup and lack of makeup, I guess, and lack of like maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
But
I thought, it's a well-directed film. It's a small film, budget-wise, not in terms of scope, but it's definitely an independent film. It doesn't shed a whole lot of new light on an already intense topic.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to elicit emotions when you're showing people sticking needles into their arms and drugging themselves up. But it's a fine film. I thought it's a mediocre film, I'd say.
Yeah. It's definitely just a story of, like, a love story with drugs involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really much more than that, but I mean it was pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
I thought.
So Andy and I both consider Candy, which is came out in 2006, directed by Neil Armfeld. It's an Australian film. It's good. It's kind of a downer, but it's worth checking out if you're interested in seeing a drug film that is not made for the ADD generation. So that'll take us to the next commercial break. Come back after the break, and I'll be recommending a movie for you guys at home. See you then. Welcome back to Seen on Screen with Ned Halaby. Today we covered the newest Rambo film from Sylvester Stallone with Stu, who joined me. And then we talked about Candy, starring Heath Ledger, with my good friend, the beautiful Andy Soberpena. Thanks to her again thanks to Stu and Andy both for stopping by and chatting with me, making this show possible. My pick of the week will be Festival Express. a rockumentary that came out in 2003 about a a festival that literally traveled by train across Canada in 1973. The footage was lost for 30 years before it was finally recovered and made into a feature film. Basically, it follows a festival that starred the Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, the band, Sha-Na-Na, and a whole lot of the 60s and 70s greatest bands, some of my favorites, as they play music and take lots of drugs and travel together across Canada. And the film's great for a couple of reasons. The first of which is the concert performances are captured beautifully. You have Janis Joplin giving just, shudder. You get shudders watching her perform live. Songs like Surrender and some other ones. But the Grateful Dead also plays some of their great classics, and the band plays I don't know, some other songs too, but they're all really great. But the coolest part of the film is the footage of the bands interacting with each other along the train. You have Rick Danko from the band taking acid and jamming out with Jerry Garcia and Janis Joplin. They all seem to be having a fabulous time together. And those are the coolest and most intimate things about the film, and that alone makes you feel more connected to the music. And the other cool part of it is it covers the sort of financial catastrophe that the Festival Express tour had for the promoters. They basically knew they weren't going to make any money because it cost so much to rent a train and travel all these groups across and buy them food and alcohol and take care of everything. They're getting protested the entire time because people thought the concert tickets were too high, and the promoters were already going broke with the ticket prices as they were. And those things are resolved in various ways. In fact, the main concert promoter actually knocks out the mayor of Calgary in one story that they tell because the mayor was giving him so much S for for having an expensive concert. There's a lot of great stories in it, and it's worth your time. So check out Festival Express on DVD, and I'm sure it's at Cinema Paradiso and Netflix and all that kind of stuff. So that's that. Thanks again for checking in with Scene on Screen with Ned Halaby. I'd like to thank Stu and Dan, as always, for directing and producing their hearts out, and Eddie Gonzalez, who is brilliant man working down here in the Media Studies basement. We'll be back next week.